Welcome back to the Carbon Trust Route to Net Zero Europe event. This next session is titled Recognizing Progress on the Route to Net Zero. The Carbon Trust are launching an exciting new service to help you take some of the uncertainty out of implementing your net zero strategy. Pauline Op-de-Beek is here to tell us more.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pauline Op-de-Beek, and I head the sales team for Europe here from our Amsterdam office. And I was part of the team that developed this new proposition. So I'm very excited to speak to you about this today. It hasn't kind of launched formally. It will do so in January. So this is really an exclusive preview of one of our newest services. Before I get onto the detail of what it is, I thought it would be useful to speak to a little bit of the context, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but to give an idea of how we got to this proposition. So naturally, much of this story started in 2015 with the Paris Agreement, where most of the world committed to limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees. But at this point, 1.5 degrees was really just a nice to have. It's really in 2018 with the IPCC report that 1.5 degrees really gained importance and the term net zero emerged. And of course, since then, we can see that this has started to become very much best practice, both on a national level as well as on a corporate level, with the G7 reconfirming their ambition to 1.5 degrees, getting closer to that at COP26. And also, interestingly, of course, the Science Based Targets Initiative has released its net zero standard, defining what it means to set a net zero target for corporates. So, as this political landscape has changed over that period of time, so too has the corporate. So, as we've already heard today from the Science Based Targets Initiative, we have over 2,000 companies that have committed and set targets. And interestingly, almost half of those are to a 1.5-degree level of ambition. And even before the net zero standard was launched, that kind of terminology has become best practice as it relates to long term target setting. So, we really see a trend in corporate commitments are really kind of accelerating the adoption of these standards, but really also kind of ramping up their ambition as well. So with that in mind, we decided that there kind of is a need for companies to be able to really communicate the action that they are taking beyond then having made those commitments. So that's why we've developed the Route to Net Zero standard, which is the only certification that helps businesses on the journey to net zero really verify their progress towards that. So, for those of you who are maybe a bit newer to the Carbon Trust, we've been consulting businesses on carbon for over 20 years, and we've also been certifying their efforts on an organizational level or on a product level for over a decade as well. So, using the combination of that experience, we've developed this standard, which is there to verify companies' journeys towards climate leadership. And it recognizes that the route to net zero is indeed a route. It is a journey that companies undertake. So it recognizes the progress that companies make at the various stages of that journey. So whether you're taking steps, advancing, or leading the way to net zero, we're here to help you navigate that landscape from an implementation perspective, but also to help you communicate your efforts in a neat package, in a way that you can kind of track and communicate that to your internal and external stakeholders. So what is this looking at? So even though the net zero definition now exists, and of course there are methodologies for setting targets, that's obviously only the first step, a very important step, and everyone is taking that step, which is great. But although that presents challenges in and of itself, the real challenge really begins when it comes to implementation. And we've heard a lot about that in the previous panel. So what we aim to do with the Route to Net Zero standard is firstly to verify a company's reductions over time. So verifying that those carbon emissions reductions are indeed taking place in line with the targets that have been set. But going beyond recognizing those reductions, we also want to help you communicate the feasibility of your implementation plans. It's one thing to commit to net zero, it's another to transform your business in line with that net zero commitment. And I think that's where the real credibility of a long term target comes from, is being able to communicate that you understand what that means in terms of transforming your business. So we'll be looking at the feasibility of your implementation plans and seeing, to what extent have your financial and operational planning changed? Have you implemented or are implementing the right programs to achieve those objectives? And also giving advice on how those can be improved. And of course, this is an assurance proposition. So it's all about tracking and communicating that in a valid, independently verified way to an external audience. So broadly speaking, what we're looking at then is looking at your emissions, so verifying the figures, but going beyond just annual reporting, really verifying those reductions over time through a third-party verification. But as I alluded to, it's not just verifying the figures, it's really verifying the efforts that underpin those reductions as well as the future reductions, and to what extent your business is actually aligning with the targets you've set. So not only will we, be assessing how you are doing today through a carbon management assessment, but also giving advice. As I mentioned, we've done this for over 20 years, and we've helped over 150 companies set science-based targets. So we do really know what it takes for a business to transform in line with that level of ambition. So we'll be assessing where you are, but also giving advice on how you can move forward. And the certification is also designed to increase in ambition over time. This is a recognition, of course, that the landscape is fast changing, whether that's from a policy perspective or what's considered corporate best practice. And because this standard is meant to help you communicate that you are transforming in line with best practice, then of course the standard must evolve in line with that as well. So, as I briefly mentioned, this is a journey, and that's why we've created an assurance proposition that has three different tiers to recognize where companies are at. Broadly speaking, each tier does do the same thing. So, it's recognizing historical emissions reductions, a commitment to future climate action, and then us providing you tailored advice so that you can get to that next level. So, what are the tiers? We have the taking steps tier. So, this is for a company that perhaps has not yet set a science based target, but does have a target in place and is reducing its emissions in line with that target, and has started to, build frameworks internally within its business to decarbonize. The real focus here, of course, is to give you advice so that you can move on to setting science based targets and increasing the level of ambition and transformation within your business. Then we move on to the advancing tier. So this is for organizations who have set a science-based target, who are reducing their emissions in line with that level of ambition, and are starting to really kind of change their business structure, operations, value chain engagements in line with the level of ambition that they have committed to. And here again, we'll be providing advice on how that can be strengthened, what changes need to take place over time, and of course, helping you get to that next stage, which is making that net zero commitment, and then again, innovating your business in line with that net zero commitment. So, for companies who do have a net zero target and who have a 1.5 degree aligned science based target, this will be the leading the way tier, and those are the requirements for that standard. And of course, when we're then looking at the carbon management practices within a business, we're looking for those to be further transformed and further ambitious still, because a business that has set that net zero commitment really does need to communicate to its external stakeholders that it understands what it means from a business transformation perspective. So we'll be looking at the extent to which that's taking place and advising you on how you can drive that forward. So the key takeaway really is that this route to net zero standard is here to help you certify the reductions that you're making in line with science, certify the feasibility of your carbon implementation plans, and helping you track and communicate your route to net zero. And it's really all about certifying companies that are turning intent into impact. And I think that, that has been one of the key takeaways so far of today is whether it's COP26, whether it's corporate net zero targets, it's really taking the intention and the commitment and being able to communicate that you are really acting upon that and turning that into impact and ambitious decarbonization. So as I mentioned, this is not something that has launched just yet. It'll be launching in January. So if this is something that you would like to hear more about, please do get in touch, and we'll be releasing more information in January as well. So thanks all for listening. And next, we'll be having a discussion on climate risk and opportunities. Thank you.